The day I finished my last chemo session, I thought life was finally giving me a second chance. My daughter Lily and her husband Ryan had come along, helping me walk through the hospital doors with smiles that looked almost genuine. The air outside smelled of rain and hope, and for the first time in months, I felt light again. We were driving home, the city sliding past in a blur of sunlight and traffic, when everything changed. Ryan was behind the wheel, talking excitedly about weekend trips and summer plans, as if nothing bad had ever touched our family. Lily sat beside him, scrolling on her phone, occasionally turning around to ask how I was feeling. I smiled weakly and said, "I'm okay," though my bones ached and my body begged for rest. Then Ryan slowed down suddenly, his eyes catching something on the side of the road. "Hold on," he said, pulling the car toward a gleaming glass showroom. The sign above it read, "Carter & Sons Luxury Motors." And there, shining under the afternoon sun, was a red Porsche. Sleek, proud, and entirely out of place in our modest lives. Ryan parked and stared through the windshield like a child seeing his dream come true. "That's it," he whispered. "That's my dream car. I've wanted that since I was 17. Before I could say a word, Lily laughed and said, "You're not serious, right? We can't just walk in and buy that." But Ryan had already opened his door. He was like a man hypnotized, running his hands over the polished surface, his reflection glowing on the metal. The salesman, sharp suit, and practiced smile appeared out of nowhere. "Beautiful, isn't she?" he said smoothly. "Barely 10,000 miles. One of the best models we've had this year." Ryan asked the price. 80,000 flat, the salesman replied, "and we can work something out for good buyers." I felt Lily's hand slip into her bag, and I thought she was reaching for her phone. Instead, she pulled out my credit card, the one I used for my medical expenses. "Go on," she said lightly, handing it to Ryan. "Use Mom's card. She's saved enough, and she doesn't really need all that money now." Her words pierced me like cold metal. Ryan hesitated, looking at her, then at me. I sat there frozen, too stunned to speak. He took the card. And in that single moment, I felt something inside me crumble. The salesman led them inside while I sat alone in the car, staring through the glass walls of the showroom. They looked so happy, signing papers, laughing, acting like what they were doing was completely normal. When they came out an hour later, Ryan held the keys to his new Porsche, his face glowing like he'd just won the lottery. Lily smiled at him proudly, slipping her arm around his waist. "Mom," she said casually, "Ryan's dream finally came true. Isn't that great?" I nodded weakly. "Wonderful," I said, though my throat burned with words I couldn't say. The drive home felt endless. Ryan drove his new Porsche ahead of us while Lily followed behind, humming softly, pretending everything was fine. My heart pounded in quiet disbelief. I wanted to scream, "How could you?" But I didn't, not yet. When we reached my house, Ryan was already outside, admiring his car under the fading sun. "You've got to feel this interior, Helen," he said. "The seats are like silk." He still called me Helen, never Mom. That should have told me everything years ago. I forced a smile and said, "It's beautiful, Ryan. I'm happy for you." Inside, Lily fussed over me again, helping me to bed like a caring daughter. "Do you want soup, Mom? Maybe some ginger tea?" she asked. "I'm fine," I whispered. As soon as the door closed behind her, I lay there staring at the ceiling. Her words kept echoing in my head. She doesn't really need all that money now. Was that how she saw me? A dying woman with savings to be spent before the funeral? For the first time, the pain I felt wasn't from cancer. It was from betrayal. After 10 minutes of lying still, I got up quietly, went to my desk, and turned on my laptop. If my daughter and her husband thought I wouldn't notice what they'd done, they were about to learn who I really was. I called my financial advisor, an old friend named Patricia, who had managed my accounts since my husband's death. When she heard what had happened, she went silent for several seconds. "Lily used your card without permission?" she asked slowly. "Yes," I said. "For an $80,000 car." "Then Helen," she replied firmly, "that's not a misunderstanding. That's fraud." Her words made my stomach twist, but I knew she was right. Patricia promised to look into the transaction immediately. "Don't worry," she said. "We'll handle this legally. You might have more power than you think." That night, as I sat by my window with a cup of cold tea, I could hear Ryan outside revving his new Porsche engine over and over, each roar echoing like a reminder. Not of my illness, but of how little they respected me. I stared into the darkness and made a silent promise. They thought I was too weak to fight back. They were about to learn I wasn't done yet. 3 days later, that same Porsche would be parked in my driveway again, but this time, with flashing red and blue lights beside it. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my bedroom floor, but I didn't feel its warmth. I sat on the edge of the bed, the events of the previous day running through my mind like a broken film reel. Lily's words, Ryan's excitement, the sound of that Porsche engine, they all echoed in my head, mixing anger with disbelief. I had survived months of chemotherapy, surgeries, and nights when I wondered if I'd wake up the next morning. I thought my daughter had been my strength through it all. But now I realized she hadn't been standing beside me. She had been standing in my shadow, waiting for it to disappear. After breakfast, I called Patricia again. Her voice was calm but serious. "I've reviewed your account, Helen," she said. "The charge went through yesterday evening. Total, $84,247, including taxes and fees." I let out a shaky breath. "Can we reverse it?" "We can file a fraud claim," Patricia explained. "It'll trigger an investigation. The dealership will have to provide proof of authorization. If it's confirmed that you didn't approve the transaction, both your daughter and her husband could face legal consequences." The word legal hung in the air like a heavy cloud. "Would that put them in jail?" I asked quietly. Patricia hesitated. "If it's proven intentional, yes. Fraud and identity theft are federal offenses." I closed my eyes. For a moment, the mother in me wanted to protect Lily from everything, even her own mistakes. But the woman in me, the one who had faced death and learned to value her own dignity, knew this couldn't go unchallenged. "Do it," I said finally. "File the claim. Are you sure?" Patricia asked softly. "Yes," I replied, my voice firm. "If they wanted to gamble with my life, they'll have to face the consequences of their own choices." After hanging up, I sat in silence. The house felt emptier than usual, like even the walls were holding their breath. I walked to the window and looked outside. Ryan's Porsche was gone. Good, I thought. Let them enjoy it while they still can. A few hours later, Lily called. Her tone was cheerful, almost rehearsed. "Hi, Mom. Just checking on you. Did you sleep okay?" "Fine," I said, keeping my voice calm. She kept talking, pretending nothing had happened, asking if I needed groceries, offering to visit in the evening. The conversation felt like a performance she'd practiced her whole life. I answered politely, but my thoughts were somewhere else. Patricia had warned me that once the report was filed, things would move fast, and they did. That evening, I received a call from Detective Ramon Santos. He had been my late husband's friend, a man who'd shared Sunday dinners at our table back when life was simpler. "Mrs. Cole," he said, his voice low but kind. "Patricia contacted me. I understand there's been an unauthorized purchase?" "Yes," I replied. "My daughter and her husband bought a car with my credit card." "Without my permission," he sighed. "I'm sorry to hear that. I'll need to collect a statement from you and forward the case to our Financial Crimes Division. Since the amount is over $50,000, it qualifies for a federal review." Hearing it said aloud made it real. My hands trembled slightly. "Do what you need to do, Detective." He paused before speaking again. "Helen, once this process begins, it can't be undone. Even if you forgive them later, the investigation will move forward." "I understand," I said. "I'm not doing this out of revenge. I'm doing it because they need to learn what betrayal costs." That night, I couldn't sleep. The ticking clock on my bedside table sounded louder than usual, matching the racing of my heart. I kept thinking of Lily as a little girl, running barefoot in the backyard, bringing me flowers she'd picked from the garden. How had that child turned into someone who could steal from me without hesitation? The next morning, I made tea and sat by the window as the sun rose over the quiet neighborhood. My phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. "Report accepted. Investigation in progress." My stomach twisted with a mix of fear and relief. There was no turning back now. Later that afternoon, I decided to take control of the narrative. I drove to Carter & Sons Luxury Motors, the same dealership where Ryan had paraded my stolen purchase. The salesman recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Cole?" What a surprise. "Everything all right with your family's new Porsche?" I looked him straight in the eye. "That car was purchased without my authorization," I said coldly. "You might want to hold on to your paperwork. You'll be hearing from the bank soon." His confident smile faltered. I see. I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. I'm not, I said simply, turning to leave. When I got home, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not weakness, not sadness, but control. For the first time since my diagnosis, I wasn't the fragile one in the story. That evening, Lily showed up at my house with a worried look. Mom, is everything okay? Ryan just got a strange call from the dealership. I stayed calm. Did he? She nodded nervously. They said there's an issue with the payment. Something about authorization. I set down my teacup and looked her straight in the eyes. There is an issue, Lily. You used my card without asking. That's called theft. Her mouth fell open. Mom, it's not like that. We were going to surprise you. By buying your husband a Porsche with my money? I interrupted. She blinked rapidly, tears welling in her eyes. Mom, please. Don't make this a big deal. You have enough saved. We didn't mean— Stop, I said quietly. You didn't mean to get caught. That's what you didn't mean. Lily started crying, reaching for my hand, but I pulled it back. You've always counted on me to forgive you, haven't you? I said softly. But this time, Lily, I think it's time you learn that love doesn't mean blindness. She looked stunned, as if she didn't recognize the woman sitting in front of her. And in that moment, neither did I. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't just a mother. I was a woman reclaiming her power. Outside, the distant hum of sirens echoed faintly through the quiet neighborhood, and I couldn't help but wonder, were they coming for the Porsche already? Change. Across the street, a small crowd had gathered near my driveway. Flashing red and blue lights reflected off the silver body of the Porsche that had caused all this pain. 2 police officers were speaking to Ryan while another stood by the car, checking papers. Lily was beside her husband, clutching his arm, her face pale and frightened. For a moment, I just watched from the porch, my robe pulled tight around me. I had imagined this moment so many times during the night, but reality still hit harder than I'd expected. One of the officers noticed me. Mrs. Cole? Yes, I said, my voice steady. I'm Officer Delgado, Phoenix PD. We're investigating a possible case of financial fraud involving this vehicle. Can we ask you a few questions? Of course. Ryan turned toward me, his eyes wide with disbelief. Helen, tell them it's a misunderstanding. Tell them you said it was fine. I looked at him, calm as the morning sun. I never said that, Ryan. You both know I didn't. Lily's lips trembled. Mom, please don't do this. We can fix it. We'll return the car. I shook my head slowly. It's too late for that now. The officer nodded politely. Mrs. Cole, we'll need you to come by the station later today for a formal statement. Of course, I said. Ryan's voice cracked as another officer approached him. You can't be serious. We're family. Exactly, I said softly. And that's what makes it worse. When they led him to the police car, I turned away and walked back inside before Lily's sobs could change my mind. I shut the door, leaned against it, and took a deep breath. The sound of the engine fading down the street felt like closure, cold but necessary. I spent the next hour sitting quietly in my living room, staring at a framed photo of Lily when she was a little girl. Her gap-toothed smile, her small hands clutching a flower she'd picked for me. It all felt like another lifetime. I whispered to the photo, I wish you'd stayed that girl. By mid-afternoon, I was at the station giving my statement. Detective Santos greeted me warmly, but there was seriousness in his eyes. Helen, I want you to understand how this process works, he said. Since the purchase was made without your permission, and the amount exceeds $50,000, the case automatically escalates to a federal level. The dealership will have to cooperate fully, provide security footage, signatures, and the credit card authorization form. I nodded. I'm ready to cooperate too. Good, he said. I know this isn't easy, but I've seen too many people let things slide because the thief was family. You're doing the right thing. Maybe, I replied quietly. But it still feels like losing something more than money. He gave a small nod. That's the part people never see. After the statement, I returned home to find Lily waiting on my porch. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair a tangled mess. Mom, she said, rushing toward me. Ryan's in custody. They said they might charge him with fraud. You have to help us. I walked past her and unlocked my door. You should come inside, I said. We need to talk. She followed me in, shaking. Please, Mom, I'm begging you. Ryan didn't mean any harm. We were just excited. I turned sharply. You thought I was dying. She froze, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't mean it like that. But that's what you said, I reminded her. You told him I wouldn't live long enough to spend it. You used my illness as an excuse to take what wasn't yours. Mom, she whispered. I walked to the kitchen, poured 2 cups of tea, and handed her one. Sit. She obeyed, trembling like a child caught stealing candy. I spoke to Detective Santos today, I began, and he said something that made me think. He said fraud is fraud, even when it's family. And you know what? He's right, Lily covered her face with her hands. I just wanted to make Ryan happy. He's been so stressed since your treatment started, and we thought, if we could do one big thing before... She stopped herself before finishing the sentence. Before what? I asked quietly. Before I die? Her silence was answer enough. Lily, I said, my tone softening. I know you thought my sickness made me weak, but you've forgotten who I am. I didn't survive cancer just to be treated like I'm already gone. She looked up at me with wide, tearful eyes. Are you going to let them put him in jail? I didn't put him there, I said. You both did, she shook her head. You're punishing all of us for one mistake, I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. A mistake is forgetting to return a borrowed book. Stealing $80,000 from your mother? That's a choice. The silence between us stretched painfully long. The sound of the clock ticking filled the space. Finally, she whispered, I'll make it right, Mom. I'll fix this. Just please, don't let them take him away. Fixing it? I said slowly. Starts with taking responsibility. She nodded, her lips trembling. I'll call the dealership. I'll explain. Maybe if we return the car, I cut her off. It's not that simple anymore. There's an official investigation now. You can't just erase it with a phone call. Her hands dropped to her lap. Then what can I do? I looked out the window at the empty driveway, at the faint tire marks left behind by the tow truck. Start by understanding this, Lily. Money can be replaced. Trust can't. For the rest of the evening, she sat there in silence, sipping her untouched tea as tears slid down her face. I wanted to reach out and comfort her, but something inside me had hardened. I wasn't just her mother in that moment. I was the woman she had underestimated. As night fell, I stood and said quietly, You should go home, Lily. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. She stood slowly, eyes hollow. Mom, will you ever forgive me? I paused at the doorway. Maybe. But not until you understand what you really did. When she left, I turned off the lights and sat by the window again, watching the street where the Porsche had once been. The silence felt heavier now, but not unbearable, because somewhere deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, my phone buzzed before sunrise. For a moment, I thought it was Lily, maybe calling to apologize again. But when I glanced at the screen, it was Patricia. Her tone was urgent. Helen, I went through your transaction history like you asked. There's something you need to see. A familiar chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? It's not just the Porsche, she said. I found multiple withdrawals from your savings over the last few years. Transfers made under your daughter's name. Some labeled as family expenses, others as emergencies. I frowned, trying to steady my voice. How much are we talking about? Patricia hesitated before answering. A total of about $120,000. My heart dropped. That can't be right. I double-checked, Patricia said softly. Most of the transfers went through online banking. The access was granted under your joint authorization from years ago, when you gave Lily permission to help you manage things after David passed. I remembered that time vividly. I had just lost my husband and could barely think straight. Lily had offered to handle the bills, the taxes, the paperwork. I had trusted her completely. But now that trust felt like a knife in my chest. I'll need those records, I said finally. Already sent to your email, Patricia replied. And Helen? I'm sorry. I know this hurts. I thanked her and hung up. My hands were trembling as I opened my laptop. There it was. A list of transactions highlighted in yellow. Thousands here, thousands there. Each one justified with vague notes like home repair, medical help, or travel emergency, all lies. I sat there in silence, realizing that Lily's betrayal hadn't started yesterday. It had been happening for years, slowly, quietly, while she smiled at me, cooked for me, and told me she loved me. I called Detective Santos immediately. Detective. It's Helen Cole. There's more you need to know. He arrived an hour later carrying his worn leather notebook. When I showed him the bank statements, his brows furrowed deeply. This changes things, he said. We're no longer looking at a single act of fraud. This shows a pattern. Long-term financial exploitation. I rubbed my temples. She's my daughter, Ramon. I know, he said gently. But this is serious. Under federal law, exploiting an elderly or medically vulnerable family member is considered an aggravated offense. The words hit me like a cold wave. Elderly. Vulnerable. Maybe I was both. But I refuse to be a victim anymore. What happens next? I asked quietly. The investigators will review this. If they find enough evidence, charges could expand. Conspiracy, identity misuse, possibly even money laundering depending on how those funds were used. My breath caught. They'll go to prison? If convicted, yes. He closed his notebook and looked at me kindly. Helen, you can still decide how far to push this. You can cooperate fully, or you can request a limited scope. But once it's in federal hands, it's not entirely your choice. I nodded slowly. I understand. When he left, I sat in the quiet house, staring at the framed wedding photo of Lily and Ryan. I'd paid for that wedding. The venue, the catering, the dress, all of it. And now, every time I looked at that picture, I wondered if they had already started stealing from me back then. Later that afternoon, Lily called again. Her voice was smaller this time, trembling with exhaustion. Mom, they released Ryan for now, but the police took his statement. They said there might be federal charges. What's happening? Things you started, I said evenly. Mom, please. I swear we didn't mean for it to go this far. Didn't mean to? I repeated, my voice rising for the first time. You've been taking money from me for years, Lily. You lied every time you said it was for something urgent. How could you? She went silent for a moment. You looked so tired after Dad died. I just wanted to take care of things for you. But then we got used to it. It was easy. Easy? I whispered. You turned your mother into a bank account because it was easy? Her voice cracked. I'm sorry, Mom. Please, tell them it was a misunderstanding. I took a long breath before replying. No, Lily. You misunderstood what love means. There was nothing but silence on the line before she hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about David, how proud he had been of the small nest egg we'd built. How careful he was about every expense. If he were alive, he'd be furious at what our daughter had become. But then I remembered something. David had once mentioned setting up a few investments for Lily's future. I'd never looked closely into them. He'd handled most of our finances. A thought began to form. A fragile, dangerous idea. The next morning, I went to my late husband's old lockbox at the bank. Inside were a few old documents, some savings bonds, and a sealed envelope marked, "For Lily's future." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a trust statement, her inheritance. It had grown over the years into something substantial. Nearly $180,000. My breath caught. She had more money waiting for her than she'd ever known. Enough to pay back every dollar she had taken, if I chose to let her. I sat there, reading my husband's neat handwriting on the final page. If Lily ever loses her way, remind her what real wealth means, integrity, not money. Tears blurred the ink. Maybe David had known this day would come. Maybe he'd known she would need to learn this lesson the hard way, and suddenly I knew what I had to do. I would show her that even forgiveness had a price, and it wasn't paid in cash. Lily arrived the next morning, looking like she hadn't slept a minute. Her eyes were puffy and her clothes were wrinkled, as if she had thrown them on in a rush. When I opened the door, she hesitated at the threshold, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Mom," she began softly. "Thank you for seeing me." I stepped aside. "Come in, we need to talk." She followed me into the living room, glancing nervously at the stack of papers on the coffee table. Her hands trembled as she sat down. I could see she was terrified, but part of me wondered if she was more afraid of losing me, or of losing my money. "Tea?" I asked. She nodded, her voice barely audible. "Yes, please." As I poured the steaming water, she spoke in a rush. "Ryan's panicking, Mom. The police called again this morning. They said the dealership turned in the paperwork, and there's a federal investigator reviewing it. They even mentioned something about financial exploitation." I set the teapot down carefully. That's correct, I said. The bank's investigation uncovered years of unauthorized transactions. Did you think they wouldn't notice eventually? Her face went pale. Years? I met her gaze squarely. You've been withdrawing money since after your father died. Lily, Patricia found everything, every transfer, every fabricated emergency. Over $100,000. She blinked rapidly, shaking her head. Mom, no. It wasn't like that. You told me I could help manage your finances. I never meant to. To what? I interrupted. To steal? To betray me quietly until I was too weak to fight back? Her lips trembled. I thought you'd understand. We just needed help sometimes. Ryan's job was slow and the bills kept piling up. I thought when things got better, we'd pay you back. I let out a humorless laugh. You spent my money on vacations, home decor, and that car. Don't insult me by calling that help. She bowed her head, tears dripping onto her lap. I know, Mom, I was stupid. Please tell me what I can do to fix this. I walked to the shelf, retrieved the folder I'd found in the bank's lockbox, and placed it in front of her. There's one thing you need to see. She looked at it warily, then opened it. Her breath caught as her eyes scanned the page. Mom, what is this? Your inheritance, I said calmly. Your father left it for you years ago. Investments, bonds, property, white, all in your name. It's worth around $180,000 now. Her jaw dropped. What? I never knew. No, you didn't, I replied. Because your father wanted you to receive it only when you were responsible enough to understand what money means. I was supposed to decide when that time came. She stared at the papers in disbelief, a mix of hope and guilt flickering across her face. Then why now? Why are you showing me this? Because you need to make a choice, I said, my voice steady. You can use this inheritance to repay what you stole, every cent, including the Porsche, and start over clean. Or you can let the investigation run its course and both you and Ryan can face prison time. Her mouth fell open. Prison? Yes, Lily, this isn't a slap on the wrist anymore. This is federal. She pressed her palms against her temples, her breathing shallow. Oh my God, Mom, please don't do this, please. Ryan will lose his job. We'll lose everything. You already took everything, I said quietly. My trust. My peace of mind. The years I thought I was loved for who I am, not for what I had. Tears streamed down her face. So what do you want me to do? I handed her a pen. Sign these documents. They'll transfer your inheritance funds into my account for restitution. Once it's complete, I'll inform the investigators that the damages have been paid, and I'll recommend leniency. Her hand shook as she stared at the pen. You'd still turn us in? I won't lie for you, I said. But I'll help you take responsibility. She wiped her eyes, looking both broken and relieved. If I do this, will you ever forgive me? I sighed. Forgiveness isn't something you earn in a day, Lily. It's something you rebuild piece by piece. For a moment, the room fell into a deep silence. Then she took the pen and signed her name. The sound of the ink scratching against the paper felt final, like a door closing on the past. When she was done, she whispered, Does Ryan know about this inheritance? No, I said. And I think it's better if he doesn't. This money isn't a gift. It's a lesson, Lily nodded weakly. He'll be furious. He'll be grateful one day, I said softly, when he realizes what real consequences feel like. She gave a small, shaky laugh that quickly turned into a sob. Dad would hate me if he knew. I placed my hand over hers. Your father would be disappointed, yes. But he'd also believe in second chances. So do I, if you're willing to learn. Lily looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. I'll do whatever it takes. Good, I said, standing. Then we'll call Patricia tomorrow and begin the transfers. Once that's settled, we'll meet with Detective Santos. I'll tell him restitution is in progress. She rose slowly, clutching the folder to her chest. Thank you, Mom, she whispered. I don't deserve this, but thank you. As she walked toward the door, I watched her shoulders. Smaller somehow, weighed down by the gravity of her choices. Lily, I said before she left. She turned back, eyes glistening. This doesn't erase what happened, I told her. It only decides what happens next. She nodded and walked out into the pale morning light. I stood there for a long time, the silence heavy but strangely peaceful. Maybe finally we were beginning to rebuild, not just money, but truth. And yet, as I watched her car disappear down the street, a thought tugged at me. A quiet whisper of doubt. Had I really saved her? Or simply bought her freedom? The next morning came with a strange calm. The air outside was crisp, the kind of quiet that almost feels like warning before a storm. Lily was supposed to meet me at the federal building along with Detective Santos to finalize the restitution paperwork. She had sounded determined the night before, fragile but ready to make things right. When I arrived, she and Ryan were already there, waiting in the hallway outside the investigator's office. Ryan looked tense, his jaw tight, his eyes darting everywhere except toward me. Lily looked pale, clutching a file of documents like it was a shield. Detective Santos greeted us warmly, though his expression was serious. "Morning, everyone," he said, motioning us into a small conference room. "Let's go over where we stand." 2 federal agents were present, Agent Reed and Agent Chen. They had been handling the case since the beginning, and they wasted no time. "Mrs. Cole," Agent Reed said, "we appreciate your cooperation. The restitution funds have been verified. However, during our financial review, we uncovered additional transactions that don't appear to involve your daughter directly." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He slid a printed report across the table. "Several transfers from your investment account were routed to a secondary checking account in your name, but this account was recently linked to another identity. A man named Ryan Harper." My heart froze. "Ryan?" Agent Reed nodded. "It appears he created a duplicate online account under your credentials. Some of the money Lily withdrew was redirected to a separate account without her knowledge." Lily turned toward her husband, her face drained of all color. "Ryan, what are they talking about?" Ryan's eyes widened. "That's ridiculous." "I'd never—" "Mr. Harper," Agent Chen interrupted firmly. "We have digital evidence of the transfers, including the IP address and timestamp from your home network. Would you like to explain that?" Ryan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His silence said everything. Lily looked shattered. "You told me we were fixing things together. You said it was all going to be okay." He slammed his fist on the table. "You don't understand. I was trying to protect us. You gave her access years ago. What's the difference if I just helped manage it too?" "The difference," I said quietly, "is consent. You never had mine." The room fell silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioner and the frantic tapping of Lily's foot. Agent Reed spoke again. "Mrs. Cole, based on the data, it seems both parties, your daughter and her husband, have been accessing your accounts independently. We'll recommend prosecution for dual financial exploitation unless you request leniency." Lily covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he did that." Ryan leaned back in his chair, defiant but defeated. "Go ahead, press charges." "You've already destroyed us." I looked at him carefully. "No, Ryan, you destroyed yourself when you decided greed mattered more than family." Detective Santos sighed, glancing at me. "Helen, you don't have to decide today. Take some time. The prosecutor will honor your input before finalizing recommendations." I nodded, but my mind was already made up. "Thank you," I said softly. "I'll let you know my decision tomorrow." When we left the building, Lily followed me to the parking lot. She looked utterly broken. "Mom," she whispered, "I didn't know he was still taking from you. I thought after we signed the restitution, you'd finally forgive us." "I wanted to," I said truthfully. "But forgiveness doesn't survive new lies." She shook her head, tears falling. "He kept saying we'd pay everything back once we sold the house." I believed him. "God, I was so stupid." "You believed him because you wanted to," I said. "Because it was easier than seeing the truth." She stared at me, her voice small. "What happens now?" "That depends on you, Lily," I replied. "You can finally stand up for what's right, or you can keep defending someone who never deserved your loyalty." For the first time, I saw something shift in her eyes, a flicker of strength. "I'll testify," she said quietly. "If they need me to, I won't protect him anymore." I touched her arm gently. "That's not just courage. That's the beginning of redemption." That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring at the documents Patricia had emailed earlier that day. There it was, in plain numbers, Ryan's secret transactions, his forged digital signatures, his greedy fingerprints on every dollar he'd siphoned away. I forwarded the evidence to Detective Santos with a short note. "Do what you must. Truth matters more than appearances." For the first time since this all began, I felt something like peace. Later that night, my phone rang. It was Lily. Her voice was calm, steadier than I'd heard in weeks. "Mom," she said, "I told the agents everything. About the account, about Ryan's manipulation. They said it'll help my case." "I'm proud of you," I said softly. She took a shaky breath. "They're arresting him tonight." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of her words settled like a shadow between us. "Mom," she whispered finally, "does this make me a terrible person? Turning in my own husband?" "No," I said. "It makes you someone who finally understands the cost of trust." She sniffled quietly. "I don't know if I can ever forgive myself." "Then start by forgiving the part of you that stayed silent too long," I said gently. "That's how you move forward." When I hung up, I went out onto the porch. The night was still and quiet, the stars glimmering faintly over the desert sky. Somewhere far away, I thought I heard sirens. But maybe that was just my imagination, or maybe it was justice catching up to the last of my pain. For the first time in months, I smiled. This wasn't revenge. It was closure. The courthouse was colder than I expected. The marble floors echoed every nervous step, and the scent of old paper and polished wood filled the air. Lily walked beside me, clutching her handbag tightly. Her face was pale but calm, as if she had finally made peace with what was coming. When we entered the courtroom, Ryan was already seated at the defendant's table. He looked smaller somehow, his confidence gone, his arrogance replaced by something hollow. He didn't look at us. Not once. Detective Santos gave me a small nod from the back row, a quiet gesture of reassurance. The federal prosecutor, a woman named Julia Hart, stood near the front reviewing her files. When she looked up, she gave me a professional but kind smile. "Mrs. Cole," she said softly, "thank you for coming. The court appreciates your cooperation and your decision to allow restitution instead of full sentencing." I nodded, my voice low. "This was never about punishment, Ms. Hart. It was about truth." When the judge entered, everyone rose. The courtroom fell silent. "Please be seated," he said. His tone was firm but not unkind. "Today we're here to finalize the matter of United States versus Ryan Harper and Lily Harper." Lily flinched at hearing her name spoken like that in the same breath as her husband's. The judge began summarizing the case. He detailed the unauthorized transactions, the fraudulent purchase of the Porsche, and the subsequent discovery of multiple financial manipulations over several years. Each word felt like a stone dropping into a well, echoing endlessly. Finally, he turned to me. "Mrs. Cole, do you wish to make a statement before sentencing?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat felt dry. Then I stood, my hands trembling slightly. "Your Honor," I began, "I'm not here to ask for punishment. I'm here to ask for understanding. I've been through cancer, grief, and betrayal, and yet somehow, this courtroom feels like the hardest part of all. My daughter and her husband didn't just take money from me. They took trust. And trust," I said, pausing, "is far more valuable than any dollar amount." I glanced at Lily, whose eyes were already red with tears. "But I believe people can change. My daughter has shown remorse and has begun to make things right. She repaid what she could and cooperated fully. I ask that mercy be shown to her." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "And Mr. Harper?" I looked toward Ryan, who finally met my eyes for the first time in months. There was no anger left in me, only disappointment. Mr. Harper made his choices knowingly. I trust the court to decide what justice requires. When I sat down, Lily reached over, her hand trembling. I let her hold mine. For the first time, it didn't feel like she was taking. It felt like she was asking. The judge adjusted his glasses and read from his notes. "Given the cooperation and full restitution provided by Mrs. Harper, the court will accept the prosecution's recommendation for probation and mandatory financial counseling in lieu of imprisonment. Mr. Harper, however, is sentenced to 2 years in federal custody for identity fraud and financial exploitation." Lily gasped quietly. Ryan closed his eyes, his shoulders sinking. The judge continued, "Additionally, the defendants are to complete 400 hours of community service, focusing on elder financial protection programs." He paused, looking directly at them. "Let this not be a story of destruction, but one of accountability." And just like that, the gavel fell. The sound echoed through the courtroom like the final note of a long, painful song. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun was blinding. Lily stood beside me, silent for a long time. Then she whispered, "Mom, I don't know how to thank you for standing up for me, for still believing in me." I looked at her, my voice steady but soft. "Believing in you doesn't mean forgetting what you did, Lily. It means believing you can become better than your mistakes." She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "I will, I promise." We walked to the parking lot together. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she turned to me again. "Mom, do you ever think you'll forgive him?" I thought about Ryan, the way he'd smiled that day at the dealership, the way he'd whispered that the Porsche was his dream car, not realizing it would become the symbol of his downfall. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Forgiveness isn't a gift for him, it's freedom for us. Maybe one day when the anger fades," Lily nodded, and we stood there watching as the police car carrying Ryan drove away. Later that evening, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, watching the sky turn gold over the desert. The same place I'd once sat feeling broken now felt peaceful. The Porsche was gone, but in its place was something far more precious: clarity. Lily came by just before sunset. She'd changed into simple clothes, her face tired but peaceful. "I've been offered a position at the Community Outreach Center," she said softly. "Helping elderly folks with their finances," I smiled. "That sounds right. I want to make this right, Mom," she said. "Not just for the court, for you." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "Then start by keeping your word." She nodded, smiling through tears. "I will." As the sky deepened to purple, I felt the weight of the last few months finally lift from my chest. I had lost money, trust, and even moments of faith, but I had gained something else: peace, strength, and a daughter who finally understood the meaning of love without conditions. I took a deep breath, the desert air filling my lungs, and whispered to the quiet sky, "David, I kept my promise." She learned. For the first time in a long time, I felt his presence, not in sadness, but in pride. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the world in gold one last time. And as the night settled, I realized this wasn't the story of betrayal anymore. It was the story of survival, forgiveness, and a mother who refused to be anyone's victim ever again.